So someone asked me if I have like a regimen, like a strict timetable for each day, and no, I don't have a strict timetable for the day. These days what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to sort of be in tune with my body and my mind, and they kind of give indications to me. So that sounds pretty stupid when I say it that way. It's actually very straightforward. Obvious example is like, if I am falling asleep at the computer desk, that suggests that I need to sleep. I don't take naps because I know that my body doesn't like naps. I need like long periods of sleep, 8 hours or more. And I'm just honest with myself, like naps don't work for me. If I'm fidgety, then I know that I've got too much energy and I need to go to the gym. Or I need to raise the desk up, like that, and stand up for a while and maybe pace around a bit. Well, if I'm procrastinating, that can be an indicator of several things. It can mean that, I know this is weird, but it can mean that I'm not comfortable. I don't know, maybe maybe I'm hungry. Maybe what I'm wearing is itchy. And that's just causing a little bit of resistance, and it's making me, it means that I'm struggling to get into deep focus. Or it could mean that I need to go to the gym. You know, it might mean that I've got excess energy. But the more likely thing is that it just means that I've got too much stimulus around me. There's like, especially with the internet, it just means that like my mind is wandering and I'm not able to control my mind. So that's okay. Procrastination is okay in a manageable amount. A small amount of procrastination is all right, as long as it doesn't lead you to more procrastination, which causes a negative feedback loop, which makes you just stay in this hole of procrastination for half a day or more. It's better to sort of allow yourself to do a small amount of procrastination and then recognize the traps. Traps are things like infinite scroll features in websites, like Pinterest is a trap. You can scroll forever, which keeps you in a loop, which feels rewarding, but really you're just wasting time. The best strategy I have come up with so far for tackling procrastination, when you're your own boss and you're managing yourself, the best way I've found is just a simple notepad. So you just write things down when they come to you, and that's all you're allowed to do. So during your work session, you have the notepad open, and the worry for me is like, I think of something and it's like, oh yeah, I need to do that. That's something I need to do. The only thing I'm allowed to do during that, when I'm trying to get into flow state, when I'm working, the only thing I'm allowed to do is write it down on a list. But that is very comforting to me, because if I write it down, I know that I can read it later and I won't have forgotten. Because a common thing that starts the procrastination cycle is I'm going to forget to do that, and that's going to cause problems later on. So it's a good way to stay in the zone when you're working, but also to not forget those things. And it doesn't really take you out of it too much, because you just write it down and then go back to work. So notepads are the best thing for procrastination I've found. And also just learning from experience where those traps are. Beware of infinite scrolls. That's one of the easiest ones, but also just certain message boards, you'll find they are just terrible for trapping you there and keeping you there. Find out what they are, be honest with yourself, and limit your use. Maybe you want to turn off your internet. One thing that I tried a while back was to take my Cintiq, my portable Cintiq companion, and just go to a cafe and make it a cafe which doesn't have Wi-Fi, so you have to work on the file. There's not really much else for you to do there. Yeah, that's one thing you can try, but that's usually an extreme measure that I don't need to go to. But it can be fun as well, just to get out the house and do something else. So basically, yeah, I listen to my body. Procrastination in small doses is not a bad thing, because you can actually make some really cool discoveries while you're procrastinating. Sometimes I'll be researching a famous photographer, and yeah, that's procrastinating, but I'm also learning something pretty cool, which is informing my own general knowledge. So there's good procrastination as well, procrastination which really just feeds into your overall understanding of the world And that's not such a bad thing. It's the bad procrastination where you're not actually gaining anything from it. You want to kind of incentivize it for yourself to not use those things. Even like instant messenger, you're maintaining your network of friends. If you're talking to your friends on social, you're keeping a healthy relationships with the people around you and keeping your network close to you. That's not such a bad thing. That's quite a good thing to maintain. So think about flow state though. The best way you can be productive in a day is to try and get into flow state and then not come out of flow state for a long period of time. Just try to stay in there as long as possible, basically. Because the hardest part is actually getting into flow state. That's the hardest part. Maybe you need a strict time to get into that. But for me, another natural thing I've found with my body is that I am naturally a late night person. Like, I stay up very late. And that is because I start off the day very unproductive, naturally. Like, my brain isn't working very well. Physically, I'm not very strong, or I'm just not good at anything in the morning. And gradually throughout the day, I build momentum and I get stronger, I get more focused, a lot more focused, so that towards the end of the day, I'm blazing through so much work. And so if I switch my routine up and decided to wake up at 6 a.m. every day, some people would say, oh, that's really productive of you. It's not productive for a late night, for a natural night owl to be waking up at 6 a.m. every day. That is not a productive thing to do. So I'm very much trying to stay in rhythm with my own body and allow myself to work very late and allow myself to kind of take the mornings off or take it very easy in the mornings. And that's working pretty well for me. But, you know, at the same time, it's because things are quite chill in my life. I am allowing myself quite a lot of flexibility. But yeah, it's something to think about at least. I think a lot of people aren't saying those things. You see a lot of productivity hackers who have a completely different approach to that, and I often find myself disagreeing with them. So yeah, those are just my thoughts on productivity, because I think some of you might be interested in that. Okay, now I need to get back to animating. Hopefully when I'm finished with this, it's going to look like magic. It's a moving drone shot in live action, and I have to recreate that in 2D animation and then animate a seamless transition while this camera, this drone shot is in motion. So very, very tricky. It's really just problem solving. Every step of the way presents a new problem which I then have to think about and solve. I've basically created a few different layers. The thing with the human eye is that it only perceives 3D depth within about a 20-meter range, and beyond 20 meters of range, it's actually, what you're actually seeing with the human eye is basically a 2D image. That's kind of fortunate for us because we're able to bluff a lot of the three-dimensionality of it. The whole of the backdrop can just be presented as one big 2D image. The foreground is also a 2D image, but we have to finesse it a little bit more to at least give it the impression of 3 dimensions. I've just lightly coloured this purple, this platform, so that I can identify it from the live action version, because they look almost exactly the same if I took off the colouring. One of them is hand drawn though. Yeah, right now I'm tracking it to the live action. It's in its own composition, so later on I'm going to switch out the still image for an animated composition where the 2D animation kind of erodes away to reveal the live action version. Yeah, I have to do that later, so we got to do this in steps. It's really important with these things to just break them down into as many smaller steps as possible, because otherwise it's just overwhelming what you have to do. So if I turn on the animated layer over the top, you can see that I've just gone ahead with a few straight ahead tweens, and that is the tweens aren't capturing the nuance of the motion, the way it moves in 3D space, and that being translated to 2D space. When you do a straight ahead tween, it doesn't work. So I have to now go and do a lot of finessing. So yeah, broken down into 3 layers. I've already animated the character animation at the start of this. You see him run on there and then come to a stop exactly where the live action version of him is. And then yeah, we're still working on the tracking for that. I've also painted the whole backdrop. I had to trace over it with colour, which was kind of tricky. That was quite difficult artistically, because if you get it to be too close to the live action version, then it's not a very significant transition. So you have to kind of hold back on some of the detail with this one, with the painting version. Otherwise, it's not a very noticeable transition, if that makes sense. Hopefully it will look good. I can't tell yet, but I'll show you an update when it's done.